Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our guest in studio is Brian Moore Ward, Boston area man living with MS, working with Biogen and MS World, helping to launch hashtag #MySupportHero. It's a program that encourages people living with MS to virtually thank and recognize their support partners for their ongoing help, care, support, and most of all, their love. Although Mr. Ward was diagnosed just before his 30th birthday, he continues to pursue his passions, including hiking and even hot air ballooning. And he's here with us today to talk about this initiative, hashtag #MySupportHero. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Brian.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. You were here in another segment, and we talked about your personal journey living with multiple sclerosis, how you were diagnosed, changing your life at a time when you were changing your life. Talk about your diagnosis just before you were about to get married.
As you said, it was about 6 months before I turned 30. That's the time of your life when you're getting excited. You're really entering adulthood. Mm-hmm. I was married 6 months, and then my arm went numb for about a few weeks, and I was initially diagnosed with carpal tunnel. And from there, after some trial and error and having a bad fall and seeing a pain specialist, and they reviewed my medical chart, we realized it was actually multiple sclerosis after MRIs and numerous doctor visits.
Was there something in the characteristics of the injury that made it more apparent that it was MS as opposed to the misdiagnosed carpal tunnel?
Well, I think, with carpal tunnel, there's pain and numbness in the wrist areas and the arm. Mm-hmm. And since I do work on computers every day, it kind of made sense that could be what it was. The best way that I can describe it is, when you hit your funny bone, imagine whacking your funny bone incredibly hard where that sensation's actually going up and down like the right side of your body. That's how it actually was for me. So after I was actually getting an anti-inflammatory for the carpal tunnel, the symptoms slowly subsided for a small period of time. Yeah. And then I got a new symptom. And then symptoms were getting a little bit more progressive, where I had optic neuritis and lost sight in my right eye for about 12 weeks. So symptoms would get worse and worse, and then the initial diagnosis had come in.
How is your husband holding up? I mean, many times people have a caregiver that is someone that's contracted to come in if their needs are to that extent. Was there any training that your husband Charlie had to take in order to care for you, or is this just a trial and error thing that you guys are learning together?
No, it was absolutely trial and error. He just kind of jumped in and did a bunch of research, contacted a local MS chapter, the National MS Society chapter, also resources like msworld.org. And he found different chat rooms, talked to people, support groups in our area. But no, we actually had to kind of just jump into it and learn everything about disease on our own. And I let him be the forefront in that because otherwise it was just making me think about everything wrong that could happen. Yeah. So having him jump in. Right. So it's incredibly stressful. And at that time, we were trying to start a life together, and it was just everything on top of us. So it was an incredibly emotional, stressful time. More so, I'd say, even for him, because he was trying to determine what his plan or, how he would actually have to alter his life to help me out. But luckily, he's stuck with me, and 12 years later, he's still here, and he's still the biggest resource I have.
And that's great. Now, you're working with an organization, Biogen, and another organization, MS World, and you've launched hashtag #MySupportHero. And I guess, your support hero would be Charlie. Do you have others in your network that actually are hands-on? Or is it more of a support group, as you say, through social media, with Charlie being pretty much your sole caregiver?
Well, definitely he's my primary, but I have, my family, my immediate family, and I have amazing close-knit friends, obviously, that are very attentive to me and, the multiple sclerosis. So I do have an extended support, which is great. But this initiative that was started by Biogen and MS World is wonderful because March is MS Awareness Month. And because March is MS Awareness Month, starting this initiative, the hashtag #MySupportHero, is a way to thank people like Charlie and even nurses and caregivers that are in the background and I mentioned that this can affect them just as much as the MS patient, and they don't always get the recognition or the thanks. So this initiative is incredibly important, especially for this being MS Awareness Month.
Are cognitive skills affected at all with MS? Is there any of that going on?
For me, definitely. Every patient is different. Every patient is different. There'll be times, I have a little bit of short-term memory, and try to say, is that really short-term memory, or you're just getting older, or the MS? I usually blame MS anytime.
Yep, there you go. If you've got it like that,
I'll blame. Oh, it's MS. And you have to find laughter in it too. Yeah. There's times in life where things can be horrible, and I'll joke. Child will be like, "We pick up the trash," and I'll joke and say, "Oh, well, I have MS," and he'll be like, "Take the trash out." So you have to find the humor in it as well too, because it's with me for the rest of my life, and you got to deal with it.
In your information, you mentioned that some of your passions and hobbies include, hiking and hot air ballooning. I don't know anyone personally that lives with MS. Did you have any relationship or know of anyone that was living with MS prior to your diagnosis that you could, I guess, fall back on their experiences and knowledge before? Did you have any of that before you were diagnosed?
No, I didn't know. Personally, didn't know anyone. And then after, which I found out later that a great aunt of mine, who had died years before I was born, actually had it, but at the time they didn't really know what it was. But no, I knew no one that personally that knew it. Now, obviously, 12 years into the disease, I know numerous people and friends that I've made along the way. But at the beginning, it was us trying to figure out what it was and, educate ourselves on the disease.
How did you get Biogen on board?
Oh, Biogen. So Biogen is the sponsor as well as MS World for the initiative, My Support Hero for MS Awareness Month. And, I actually do a climb in Boston every year. That is, we just had it in March. It's the MS Climb to the Top. And they sponsor that. They're an amazing sponsor for the MS community.
Are they involved in any research and development or simply in raising awareness and sponsoring certain awareness-raising events?
Oh, absolutely. I think they do all of that. If you look at their website, there's a lot of stuff on the MS side. I know I follow them on Twitter, which is Biogen MS, and there's a lot of good resources on their Twitter and their Facebook pages about the research and awareness that they're raising for multiple sclerosis. They make some of the best medications, I think, too, for multiple sclerosis as well, too. So they're a good forefront in the fight against MS.
What type of numbers, we're not looking for specifics or anything, but a general number, of people that are living with MS, who know that they have MS, and possibly, if you're knowledgeable enough, maybe some of the folks that are displaying symptoms, and wondering, like you were, what is this? And we don't want them to, wait for years to,
I only know in the New England area that there's probably about 21 to 25,000 people that are diagnosed, but I can't really give the exact numbers. I think that would be something you have to look at, another site for probably to give those exact numbers. But I do know it does affect primarily females more than it does affect males, and usually people are diagnosed from the ages of 20 to 50.
It's something that very, very easy to misdiagnose or just pass over as an adolescent, especially if you're involved in sports, hiking, camping. You're not really going to notice some of the numbness or maybe some of the...
Exactly. Well, like you said, the symptoms can be consistent with numerous diseases and numerous autoimmune diseases. So what happens is the disease can, like I said, I had some symptoms at the beginning, but I thought it was, we thought it was carpal tunnel. If you get numbness or tingling, you could equate that to kind of anything. Lyme disease is very similar symptoms. So it's kind of a difficult, you need the right team of providers, doing the MRIs and a neurologist who knows the disease to really identify it.
Now, as we wrap up this segment, let's talk a bit about the progression. Once you're diagnosed, is it a guarantee that it will get worse, or are there levels? Some, as you said, every patient is different. Some displaying no cognitive loss, skill loss at all. Others a small bit. Some, as you say, in one specific or dominant part of the body. Is it always going to get worse, or can it stay the same?
Well, as you mentioned, the disease is very unpredictable. The four stages. I'm at the first stage, which is relapse remitting. So I can progress. If you can always progress. You hope not to, and that's why it's recommended that people go on to these modifying medications and talk to their healthcare providers to find the right option for them. The disease modifying medications, there's no cure, so it's just trying to slow down the progression of, the medication I've been taking for the past few years is just medication to help slow down the progression of the disease. Any symptoms I've had can come back. I've had optic neuritis in my right eye where I lose sight. Any of the tingling and numbness or loss of sensation or feeling can come back at any time. I've been lucky because if you looked at me, I go to the gym, I'm not overweight, I'm pretty healthy for the most part. And so if you looked at me, I don't look like someone that's, has this disease. But you got to remember on the inside, my nerves are a different story. Yeah. So on the outside, you would see me and you probably wouldn't think anything was wrong with me. I'm very active. Like you said, I'm a hot air balloon pilot. I like to hike and do all that stuff. So I don't let it limit me. Because at any time it could get worse. It's super unpredictable. And for every patient, it's different.
Well, it sounds like you're on a really good path to get the word out and raise even more awareness than, it seems like in the last, 20 years or so, there's been an upturn in the effort to get the word out about MS. You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard, and we've been in studio this afternoon speaking with Brian Moore Ward, Boston area man living and loving life with MS right now. He's working with Biogen and MS World and has launched #MySupportHero, program that encourages people living with MS to thank and recognize their support partners for their ongoing health care strength during March, which is MS Awareness Month. It's been great having you here with us today, Brian.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Transcripts and audio of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au and also at hpr.fm. And you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes.